It's All Talk on a busy Thursday morning. I'm Kevin Dietz coming to you from the Golden Tower of the Fisher Building in Minnesota. Federal agents shot and killed a 37-year-old woman during an ICE encounter in Minneapolis, triggering sharp disputes between federal officials and state and city leaders over what happened. This morning on All Talk, we have already talked with Republican Congressman Tim Walberg about this.
Any loss of life is tragic, and it shouldn't have happened. And regardless of how the investigation turns out, and you know my support for law enforcement, it's a tough job, and without them, the rest of us aren't secure in our freedoms.
We also talked with Democratic Congresswoman from the 11th District, Haley Stevens.
Heartbreaking, but it's also outrageous. We shouldn't have seen the victim lose their life. I have a lot of questions. Obviously, there's going to be a thorough and independent investigation into what happened. We need to take the temperature down, but we should have never seen a loss of life in that regard. A young mother, was the individual killed, and this is just a reminder that we can't see this level of violence in our communities.
The shooting and the operation surrounding it has reignited national debate over immigration enforcement tactics, use of force, and federal authority. Right now, we want to take you to Minnesota, where Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of the Crisis Files podcast, lives. Good morning, Roshini.
Good morning, Kevin.
It's got to be really difficult. This is your hometown. This is where you live. Can you share your personal thoughts on the situation today?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many layers, Kevin, and it is really frustrating to watch. I'm sure all of you, no matter where you live in the country, but definitely when you are a resident of Minnesota and the Twin Cities area, this all happened in Minneapolis, maybe just a few miles from where I live, I would say. And it's even more frustrating because all of this is preventable, but we also have to understand that there's kind of a vibe, I would say, in my state and definitely in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, where what you see is kind of not always what you get, and then that gets translated out to the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So I always try to bring us back to, what does the Constitution say? What does the law say? We as United States citizens, and those who even live here, even when they're not a citizen, there are certain rights that we just assume are there for us. And one of those is the First Amendment. And in the First Amendment, we have freedom of speech as well as freedom of assembly. But I looked up specific Minnesota law, Kevin, to talk about that freedom of assembly. Minnesota does protect your right to peaceful protest in public spaces. But there also are some restrictions when those kinds of protests get out of hand. Right now, as I talk with you, I'm watching live coverage on a couple of our stations of a protest that's happening in front of one of the federal buildings where ICE officers work out of. And it was supposed to be a peaceful protest. It grew into a couple hundred not peaceful. So then the ICE officers administered some tear gas. You see that gas kind of floating around. And eventually the protesters have dissipated or decided to leave, but only after dozens, if not maybe 100 ICE officers came out to set up a perimeter. So there are just so many things about this that the optics are not good. And there's a lot of blame to go around, and I just want to be the voice of reason to say it's not always the ICE officers that are at fault. We as citizens need to know we have rights, but there also are some very reasonable restrictions on those rights.
I wish when something like this happens that people would come out and talk on camera, our leaders, and talk the way you're talking, the way I opened up the show, that says, look, we have to get all the facts first. You know, if you jump out only when the first video comes out, you spoke too soon. You see, the second video might look a little different, and there may be more videos out there we don't know. And so when I hear the mayor of Minneapolis talk like this, I'm not sure that that's not leading to more people want to jump in their car and head to a protest.
We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite. People are being hurt. Families are being ripped apart. Long-term Minneapolis residents that have contributed so greatly to our city, to our culture, to our economy are being terrorized, and now somebody is dead. That's on you.
I hear that in Michigan, and I'm like, wow. If I'm in Minnesota, that probably hits me differently. What are your thoughts on the immediate reaction?
Well, I saw the press conference live that Mayor Frey had when he dropped the F-bomb, when he said the BS word. And as an executive coach, I was disappointed in the mayor of the largest city of my state, because you don't go on national television that you know is going to get broadcast everywhere and repeated and repeated and repeated, laced with profanities. That is not executive mindset. That is not executive presence. And actually, those are kind of fighting words. That's a term we use in the law. Those are fighting words that, as you say, could incite others to jump in their car and go attack ICE officers or go and attack all the nearest law enforcement. Some of what was happening on yesterday afternoon after these events were transpiring in Minneapolis is the actual federal courthouse in downtown Minneapolis had to lock itself up because people were pounding on the doors trying to break the windows of the federal courthouse. Well, guess what? The federal courthouse is where a lot of regular people go to get justice, whether it's, in a civil situation, a criminal situation, rape cases, child sex abuse, pornography, all those cases, those had to be stopped or slowed down because protesters were showing up outside of the federal building. So it is really important at this time that the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of Minnesota try to be a voice of reason. 5 years ago, both of them jumped on the television and were the first to criticize and condemn without all the facts coming in. There are so many angles from different cameras, Kevin, as you point out. And if you do look at a couple of the different angles, there was an ICE agent in front of the car, and it did look that the car moved forward toward that ICE agent. In that split second, that ICE agent, who is directly in front of a truck, didn't see all the other angles of the different cameras, doesn't know the intent of the driver in that moment, and in a split second, used his training and shot to eliminate the threat. That is what use of force experts will tell you they are trained to do, not only to protect themselves, but to protect their fellow officers as well as the rest of us, the public. So in the law, and you've heard some of this on some of the coverage, a vehicle can be used as a weapon. So when you hear ICE saying and Secretary Noem saying that truck was weaponized, there is a lot of case law that recognizes that vehicles can be weaponized, and law enforcement is allowed to use deadly force when they believe a vehicle is being used as a weapon.
Roshini Rajkumar,
I'm just saying the legalities here.
Absolutely, and I appreciate it. That's what everybody wants to know. Roshini Rajkumar, you're such a gem. Thank you so much.